All right, so we are back, and breaking news. In the same reality, we have three different things going on. Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk are fighting in their rematch for the undisputed heavyweight boxing championship of the world. I am fighting on January 18th, also on DAZN in a co-main event spot. And Conor McGregor and Logan Paul are reportedly about to fight. Not joking. All three of these things are not like the other. And I don't even know which one is more important for what it is that we do here, but it's all chaos. And we're going to talk about the fact that this is not a joke. This is not a troll. Conor McGregor and Logan Paul are apparently actually in talks to fight in 2025. We have to get to everything. And honestly, the likelihood of it happening, at least in my opinion, is more likely than you think. Why is that? And why is this happening? How is this happening? What is going on? Influencer boxing once again shocking the world. What do I mean? The breakdown. Let's go. All right, so while all of us were getting our beauty sleep at approximately 1 a.m. my time, 3 a.m. Eastern time, essentially anybody in America was asleep, Conor McGregor was tweeting about different things. One, his civil case that just finished up and how he is proclaiming innocence for what he's accused of. Take that for what you will. Apparently, the details in that case are very wish-washy on either side, so no idea what's going on there. But then in the middle of that tweet barrage, he says this. The rumors of a bout with Topuria. How would you beat Topuria if you would have fought him? I'd grab him by his neck and give him a little slap. Yeah, you guys know the clip. You know the clip. But he's talking about the UFC 145-pound champion of the world, Ilia Topuria. He says the rumors of a bout with Topuria are false. I am in preliminary agreements with the Ambani family, gonna butcher names, I apologize here, to face Logan Paul in a boxing exhibition in India. I have agreed. I will then seek my return to the octagon. How in the world do both Jake Paul and KSI call out Conor McGregor for the last 5-6 years, and Logan Paul is apparently the guy that Conor wants to fight? There's a lot of things that I want to say about that specifically, but I think there's a logical reason for that. We'll get to it in a second. Let's just read this tweet for what it is. Instead of coming back to the UFC right away, Conor McGregor is instead deciding to take an exhibition boxing match versus Logan Paul. One, I think that this is nowhere close to being finalized. In my head, when I first saw this, I was like, how is that possible? We'll also get to that in a second, but this is not a fight agreement. In fact, Conor is the only person that has said anything about this other than, we'll take a look at it now, Logan Paul just putting eye emojis behind made-up poster of him and Conor standing next to each other in Conor's tweet there. So, where there's smoke, there's fire. Logan is definitely addressing it in his own way, but this is almost unbelievable. Like, it doesn't make a ton of sense for what Conor McGregor has said about himself and has said about influencer boxing and has said about these types of exhibition matches, but at the same time, Conor McGregor, I think everybody knows now, is on his last legs a little bit. Like, it's not the Conor McGregor of old. As much as Conor wants to say it, I don't know that we'll ever see him challenge for any titles in the UFC again. In fact, if he takes this Logan Paul fight, he may never fight in the UFC, period. Not because Conor isn't skilled and because he couldn't find some big matchups in MMA. Maybe he still doesn't have it like he did in 2016 or 2018 or 2020, like whatever. He could still have a name in the UFC and still be in some competitive fights. It's because exhibitions like this one and like Conor and Floyd, although that one was a pro fight, the amount of eyes, the amount of attention, and with this Ambani family involved, the amount of money is going to be absolutely insane. And we know what happens when Conor fights a bout where he makes a shit ton of money. He tends to then go away for years at a time. So that's the first thing. And again, when I read this, I was like, bullshit. That doesn't make a ton of sense until I started to think about the connections that can be made here. What is the one thing when I sat in front of this camera for years and years now and shot down the rumors or the attempts from Jake Paul, from KSI to call out Conor McGregor and fight him? Even when Conor was saying, "Yeah, man, KSI couldn't box eggs in an egg boxing factory," or when he was calling Jake a little dope, the one thing that kept them from fighting, at least in my mind and probably in reality, is the fact that Conor is under contract with the UFC. And the UFC, the last time they allowed somebody to do something like this, at least on this scale, was Conor McGregor, but they had to split business with Showtime. And the aftermath, even if they made a lot of money, was not something that Dana White ever said he wanted to do again because of the hassle of dealing with Showtime and the, joint promotion and the whole thing. The UFC likes to run the show. They like to be the only entity controlling the things going on with their fighters because their fighters are a reflection of their company. Conor McGregor goes off in a fight with Jake Paul or KSI and let's just say loses, it damages him as a UFC fighter and it damages their future earning potential for Conor McGregor. This one's a little different, and oddly enough, a tweet from Jake Paul makes all the sense in the world as to why. Let's take a look at this. Jake said, I think like after I guess he saw what happened in Conor's tweet, he said, now it all makes sense why Conor McGregor and his management team have been desperately trying to get MVP to negotiate a fight between us. As we told them privately, and now I'm saying publicly, the only way we're willing to explore me versus Conor in a pro boxing / MMA fight is if Dana White / the UFC are at the table directly or make it clear that they are okay with discussions. Conor is washed, needs the pause, Logan by however he wants. Okay, this is probably the most important part and why I think this is more of a reality than trolling or anything else. I think this potentially could be real and actually could happen next year is because this middle paragraph of what Jake says. First off, I had heard rumors that Conor McGregor and his team had been going back and forth. We even seen Conor talking about, a potential boxing match in Riyadh with Manny Pacquiao and trying to set up him versus Terrence Crawford and all these different things. Conor looks like he is just wanting to fight, wanting to get active. And if the UFC are not satiating that, which they're not, they're saving him for some big card. And maybe that's still to come, but Conor gets a little bit impatient and wants to do these other things. Problem is, he can't really do it without, like Jake says here, Dana White or the UFC signing off or being directly at the table or being involved in some way. And it got me to think about one thing. TKO, otherwise known as the entity that owns, I think, a majority share of both the WWE and the UFC. This right here is the gambit. This is the reason potentially Conor McGregor and Logan Paul might actually fight. UFC and the WWE being under the same umbrella, wherein regardless of how the fight gets set up, whether it's a boxing match, whether it's MMA, I'm pretty sure it'll be boxing, it is a net gain for the company because both the WWE and the UFC are under their banner. There is no conflict of interest. There is no twisting wrists to get businesses to work together. It's simply a matter of getting Dana White and the UFC on board with the idea of Logan, who is a part of the WWE, who does have, as much as I don't really think it matters, the Prime drink that is a big sponsor of the UFC. There is a bit of a crossover there. And also, they're doing it under the same umbrella of the head company. TKO Group oversees it all. So if they see the value in it, and it seems like just from the reaction online today, everyone covering the story, there is value in it. I can see a world where they get on the same page with both Dana and Hunter and whoever else would need to approve this and say, yes, this would be a massive, massive fight for our brand. Imagine all the production and all of the stuff that could be put in from the UFC side or from WWE side or a combination of both to make this a massive event. And not only that, they don't have to fund it, right? The UFC doesn't have to put up the money for it. WWE doesn't have to put up the money for it because apparently, according to Conor, the agreement is done through a third party in the Ambani family. I'm not exactly sure who that is, but when you look him up on Google, Mukesh Ambani is an Indian billionaire, businessman, a chairman director of Reliance Industries. He's the richest person in Asia and the 9th richest person in the world. Apparently, he's got $119 billion. So in other words, they're loaded. And if they're willing to put this thing up to have the fight done in India, we've seen both the UFC and the WWE work in different parts of the world based on the amount of money given to them to put on a show. Riyadh season with the UFC, Saudi Arabia with the WWE, and other entities all across Asia, Europe, Africa. Like, they move their shows around when the dollars come in from either these royal rich ambassadors or people like this, just multi-billionaires. The money is there. There's not really a conflict of interest between the two companies because they're under the same overarching company. The UFC and the WWE already collaborate in some ways. You see Michael Chandler on WWE. You see some of the WWE guys coming to UFC fights. There is a bit of crossover. And again, if the head honcho, Ari Emanuel, is saying, we want to get this done, this would be a massive gain for the company, they're going to do it. And I can't believe Logan finds himself in these situations where he is in these massive blockbuster positions, but it does make sense for what Logan Paul wants to do. He wants to put on these massive events where, again, he's in an exhibition with a guy much smaller than he is on the back half of their UFC career that hasn't been a professional boxer other than one fight and fought the guy that Logan already fought and had a 60-plus pound advantage on. Again, I'm not knocking the hustle, but you can see why Logan would say yes. And also, let's not forget that Conor McGregor is the biggest name in combat sports. Like, obviously, that's another massive reason. And for all of the accolades that Jake and KSI have racked up, for it to be Logan the guy that's won one fight, yet continues to just be a massive name in the world to get it. It's a bit of a bittersweet moment for influencer boxing, because I feel like we should send our best to represent influencer boxing when we have the Conor McGregors or the Floyd Mayweathers or just the Canelo Alvarez, like whoever it's going to be, Amir Khan. I want us to push our best out there to give this thing like a real college go, like give it a competitive try here. I want to see what our guys can do against some of these names. And of course, our two best, at least at that weight, and the biggest names, Jake and KSI, we can never get those set up because of conflicts and different companies and non-affiliations with the TK. It can never happen. So of course, Logan Paul gets it instead. So again, I'm not mad. I'm not even pocket watching, hating, none of that. I think this is going to be awesome if it actually does go down. It'll be a huge event. But again, I called it bittersweet because when I look at it, this is effectively, in my opinion, the end of Conor McGregor's competitive career if he does this. Like, I know his tweet says, you know, I'll go and do this exhibition, then I'm coming back to the octagon. Conor McGregor, I'm going to say it to the camera, I don't believe you. Because when we've seen him do this before against Floyd Mayweather, it took him years to get back. And those years that Conor didn't get then, he doesn't have now. In other words, what is he, 36 years old, maybe 37 by the time this thing goes down? He's going to take another year off? Or is he going to get right back into the UFC after this exhibition? I think that Conor's wealth and status have cleared him past the point of needing to train as hard as he would to be a competitive fighter at the top level of the UFC. And I just think that a fight like this would take him even further removed from it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, by the way. Like, Conor McGregor will have essentially won combat sports. Like, his legacy is in stone with the 2-division world championships. And also, he's set for life. His kids, his grandkids' kids, all set. I'm okay with that, but let's just not get mistaken as to what happens if this goes through. And on the other side of things, at least from a business perspective, you have to give kudos to Logan if he actually gets this done. I don't even know to talk about how the fight would go, if that makes any sense, but for Logan to have, again, if this does happen, be in the ring with Floyd Mayweather, survived that fight. Again, massive weight advantage, but it's still Floyd Mayweather. Then go in and fight Conor McGregor a couple of years later. For a guy that's not a boxer, you have to give respect and say, damn, you know, you kind of did everything that everyone dreams of if they were to ever take part in this sport. So I can't really say anything other than it'll be a huge event. And if it was me, I'd do the same thing. And again, this whole thing with Conor, like, we're not even talking about the fact that he's still, you know, dealing with backlash from this civil case and him being found liable for assault and all the implications of what people think about him based on the SA allegations and all of it. Regardless if he's guilty, if he's innocent, right now he's guilty in the public eye. And taking this time, which again, I don't really know how you handle this situation if you're Conor, but just jumping right into a fight, I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know if the public's going to back him. I don't know if the public's going to, you know, invest into his fights like they would have before, but I assume because he's still Conor McGregor, of course they will. And even if you hate Logan Paul on the other side, you still seem to invest in what he does. It's kind of an odd matchup where there's no real babyface, right now at least. I think Conor would probably be the babyface because it's still Conor McGregor. He's still got a loyal fan base, but for Logan, I don't know. I don't know what side you'd be on, but I'm going to tell you this. It is, at least from who I've talked to in the last couple of hours here, this is more than just trolling. This is more than just Conor making things up to try to gain attention and clicks online. This is potentially, obviously very early on, and you see the word preliminary agreements there from Conor McGregor. No word from the Ambani family. No word really other than some eye emojis from Logan Paul, but I can tell you this, I don't care what you see on ESPN from Shannon or Stephen A. Smith or anybody else, when Conor says he is going to do something or that he is signed to do something, he usually, outside of the Michael Chandler fight, because of, in my opinion, reasons that were not necessarily under Conor's control, he is committed to showing up. That is what that tweet means to me. Now, will it actually happen? I don't know. There's so many steps. Like, again, getting this approved, making sure this is a real thing, getting the UFC on board. Again, that was the big breaking point, apparently, according to Jake Paul in negotiations with Conor. If they ever were serious, it would have to be Dana White, UFC directly at the table. The way that this reads from both Conor and Jake is that UFC may not have to be directly at the table, and Dana White may not have to be directly at the table because they're being bigger bosses at TKO that can maybe go over the head of Dana in the UFC and make this happen, regardless of maybe who Conor is contracted to. I don't know. But that reads to me like Logan and Conor are going over the head of the UFC and just saying, TKO, find a way to do this. We're under the same umbrella. And also, we have a third-party investor to put the money up for this fight with, once again, the Ambani family, or again, I apologize for mispronouncing. But the point of this thing is to tell you, I don't know why I'm surprised but I am. And for the first time in influencer boxing, when discussing Conor McGregor and the likelihood that he may actually fight one of the big three in this scene, I actually think it can and potentially will happen if TKO Group, Conor, Logan, and this third party can get on the same page and actually get it done. I'm saying it's possible, but I don't know how likely it is yet. Regardless, Conor McGregor wants a fight with Logan Paul. How that fight goes and if it's even a reality that it actually takes place, I don't have those answers yet. But I will just leave you with this right here, which is a very interesting take from one Dana White. Remember, Jake Paul said he wouldn't do business with Conor McGregor unless Dana White was directly involved or the UFC was. We know that Dana and Jake don't really get along. Dana probably wouldn't allow or wouldn't like for Conor to be in talks with Jake Paul, and again, him being under contract with the UFC just probably wouldn't let it happen. But Saturday night, after the Colby Covington and Joaquin Buckley fight, Dana had this to say to reporters talking about 2025.
I got something in the works right now. I'll drive you fuckers crazy. All you guys will be running around. I got something in the works that you will never fucking see coming for 2025 that literally started to come together last night. And yeah, we got some fun stuff coming up.
Something that we would never see coming. Something that will drive us crazy. Something that they just found out about or just started working on the night before, which would have been Friday, December 13th. And then all of a sudden we get this tweet from Conor McGregor. Coincidence? I think not. Dana White has a good relationship with Logan Paul through Prime. Has a better relationship, obviously, with him through business and talks and other things than with Jake Paul. TKO Group over the WWE where Logan Paul's employed and over the UFC. Dana White more likely to say yes to something like this if Conor is not able to come back to the octagon? Probably. I don't have those answers. Maybe I'm going full conspiracy theorist. I just think there's too many things lining up for this to be a coincidence or for this to just be trolled. So will Conor and Logan actually fight? Right now, I don't know. But I'm telling you what, it's more likely than Jake versus Conor, than KSI versus Conor, than Conor McGregor fighting at the highest level in the UFC anytime soon. And that says something. To me, that means where there's smoke, there's fire. And as the hours go on here, this matchup's starting to burn a little hotter. So, you guys let me know in the comments, do you think this fight is real? Is it a possibility? Can it happen? Will it happen? Don't have those answers yet, but guess we'll find out.